My name is Varun. I'm part of the developer experience team here at Chromatic. And with me today are Kyle and Dom. Kyle, Dom, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. So I'm also on the developer experience team, more on the Storybook side. I focus on the learning experiences, so the documentation, blog posts, tutorials, that sort of thing.
Hi, my name's Dominic. I'm one of the co-founders here at Chromatic, the company behind Storybook, and yeah, we're really excited to kind of take you through what we've been working on in accessibility. And yeah, I'll hand the mic back over to Varun to lead us on.
Thanks, Dom. So I'm pretty excited today. We launched our new component accessibility testing workflow for Chromatic this week. We've been running it in private beta for the last couple months now. So I'm going to start off with a brief overview of this feature in what our approach is and how it's different from some of the other tools out there. And then we'll go into a live demo. So we'll talk about the both the sort of the local flow with Storybook and the cloud CI based cloud testing with Chromatic. And just a bit of housekeeping. Feel free to drop in questions as we go along. We're happy to take them at any time, but definitely at the end we'll leave some time for Q&A. All right. So I think it's fair to say at this point we all understand the importance of building accessible interfaces. If you're not building accessible UI, you're at some point just failing your users. In the past, teams, sometimes cut it from scope in order to ship stuff, but that's just not a reality anymore. There's a bunch of regulatory changes that have come in. So the EAA and ADA in the US both are in effect now, which has really put a lot of pressure on teams to start shipping more accessible interfaces. And it's putting accessibility on the same level as, say, like security or performance, where you just can't ignore it anymore. And the thing is, everyone wants to create these really incredible experiences, but the problem is a lot of the traditional accessibility testing tools end up just causing a lot of grunt work. They bog you down with noisy reports and really slow you down. And when I say that, what I really mean is a lot of these traditional tools are, running page level tests, which means if you have a color contrast issue in a button, you're going to see the same error reported like hundreds of times if you're using that button across multiple pages and using the same button multiple times on a page. That makes it really hard to go and trace every single bug back down to which component is causing it. You're just wasting time by chasing duplicate issues. The other thing is when you run these tests, they tend to give you a report with all of the issues found in the application at any given time. So if you're trying to figure out, if you have a bunch of legacy accessibility debt that you're slowly addressing, but also you want to ship new stuff without having to worry about the legacy stuff, you can't differentiate between the two. You get a report that just has everything. So you don't really know if it's something that's legacy issue or if it's something that you're introducing currently in the PR that you've just opened up. And then also, a lot of these tools tend to run as browser extensions or standalone tools. So they're not integrated into your PR workflow. So by the time you run reports, run these tests, or get the reports, the code base kind of has moved on. So you're a little bit detached from the development workflow, and again, that just makes it harder to find and fix issues. With Chromatic, we wanted to take a slightly different approach. We feel that developers are key to compliance. So with Chromatic, we want to empower developers by integrating testing into the way they build applications, directly into the development workflow. We've done that with visual testing, we've done that with interaction testing, and now we're bringing accessibility testing into that same workflow. And what sets our approach differently is we're focusing on component level tests. We're also offering a regression-based workflow, and then pairing that with a real-time dashboard. And the whole thing, like I said, is integrated into your development workflow. So I'll talk about all of those in a little bit more detail. starting with the component-based approach. So at this point, most teams are building applications using some kind of component-based frameworks. You're starting with the component level and then slowly composing components to build out pages. The problem is all those traditional tools, they tend to run tests at the page level, which, like I said, really makes it hard uh, to find issues and fix issues because you're getting same issue reported to you multiple times. So in order to avoid that, with Chromatic, you're running tests at the component level. So if you find an issue, it's really obvious what component is causing that issue. So when you fix that color contrast issue in the button, it's going to be resolved across all of the pages, and you're not going to have to worry about those duplicates. And the way this is happening is under the hood, Chromatic is relying on Storybook. You're using Storybook to build components already. So instead of reinventing the wheel, we're just taking Storybook and Axe and then building on top of that. So locally, you can run accessibility tests within Storybook using the Storybook accessibility add-on. And then in CI, Chromatic takes over and takes those same stories that you're using locally to run accessibility tests in the cloud. I see there's a couple of questions here, so I'm just going to pause to see. There's a question about cost for the accessibility dashboard. Will it cost extra? I'll come to it shortly, but the dashboard is free or is part of all plans. The difference is how much data is available to you, and I'll talk about those limitations shortly. And the second question was, I understood that accessibility tests were able to run alongside visual test in Storybook. How is this different, or why is it only free until September 8th? So in Storybook, that is still free. You still can run all tests locally. The cost side comes from when you run these tests in CI using Chromatic. So that's the bit that's free until September 8th, is if you want to try out accessibility testing in Chromatic. You will you won't be charged for it until September 8th, and post that you'll be charged one additional snapshot for the accessibility test. And that was the last question, and I hope that answers. So yeah, accessibility test counts as one additional snapshot. All right, so locally you're still running tests in the Storybook. So on the CI side, like I said, Chromatic takes over, and that's where it introduces this regression-based workflow. So similar to visual tests, Chromatic tracks accessibility baselines for each story. And what that means in this case is what are the violations that are associated with each story, and that's what gets tracked in the baseline. And each violation is tied to a specific DOM node and the type of violation. So what Chromatic does is commit to commit is checking to see are new violations introduced, or is this a pre-existing violation? And if it's a pre-existing violation, it's the same as baseline, so you won't be alerted to it. But if it's a new violation, then you are alerted to it, and Chromatic flags you to go and review them. And the reason for that is this makes it easier to track things that are legacy issues. That legacy accessibility that you might be working with, or new issues that you are introducing in the specific pull request that you're working on. So let's say you start today and you have a certain amount of accessibility issues in your application. You want to address those at a later time, slowly, incrementally, but at the same time, you don't want to introduce new accessibility issues. So this allows you to catch those really easily and get alerted to fixing those. So in the same workflow that you have for Chromatic currently for visual testing, accessibility is now integrated into that as a new tab. From there, you can see what issues were found in a particular build on a particular story, and you can go through and get more detail about what that looks like, and we'll get into more of that in the demo part. And much like the current visual testing and interaction testing setup. Accessibility is included in the PR checks that go back to your Git provider like GitHub or Bitbucket. All of those tests, the three types of tests, visual, interaction, and accessibility, are reported under the UI test check itself. So it will tell you whether stories detected a visual change or an accessibility change. And then the last piece here is our dashboard. So the accessibility dashboard gives you a bird's eye view of the accessibility health of your project. So what we do is Chromatic tracks the number of violations across all branches per day. So you can go and see how things are changing over time, and look at trends. And then there's also a table that gives you uh, a list of all the components in your application that have violations associated with them, which allows you to sort of prioritize and fix things that might have the highest impact when you fix them. So this is where someone had a question about the limitation. So all plans give you access to your main branch and 7 days of data. Until September 8th, you can access data across all branches and entire data history. But if you'd like to unlock that level of access, we're offering that on the enterprise plan with the accessibility add-on enabled. So that accessibility package, sorry, that will give you access to full history and multiple branches across your project. So let's see if I just summarize that workflow really quickly. So locally, still using Storybook to run accessibility checks as you code. You can use the test add-on to run stuff in the background. In CI, Chromatic takes over, runs all your tests in parallel using Chromatic's Capture Cloud infrastructure, and then post-merge, you can analyze the health of your project using the accessibility dashboard. I'll pause here if there's any more questions, and then we'll dive into the demo. I do see one question here. Is it obligatory to run accessibility tests alongside regular visual regression testing? As in, I'd like to check accessibility periodically, but not necessarily all the time. Yes, we do require that you run them side by side, and this is the same reasoning as why we recommend running visual tests regularly. If you're running them periodically, again, you kind of miss things that should have been caught. So we find that there's more value in running these tests regularly. Tests tend to be useful the more often that you run them.
Yeah, and I'd add our intent here is to give you and your team continuous accessibility coverage, and that'd be really tough to do and spotty if users folks ended up running them periodically. You wouldn't catch all the things you would need to catch, like at the PR level, at the like while you're actually coding.
The next question is, what's the reasoning for charging an extra snapshot versus a different model of cost? If I can run Storybook tests via the CLI command, what major benefits would my team get from moving away from running accessibility tests in RCI through Storybook itself rather than integrating with Chromatic? That's a great question. So the big difference here is one, speed. Chromatic gives you unlimited parallel tests by default, so tests just run faster. But the other sort of really major reason is regression testing. So when you're running the accessibility tests using Storybook yourself in CI, you're not tracking what violations are associated with each story commit to commit. You don't have that history. But with Chromatic, Chromatic is doing that for you. It's tracking the baselines, and that's what allows you to figure out whether this is a pre-existing issue or it's a new issue that was introduced. And then as far as the cost is concerned, I should mention that on Enterprise Plan, if you are using the accessibility package, that does give you a different pricing model for accessibility tests. So they're sort of more baked into your plan, and instead of worrying about individual snapshots.
And I'd also add, Wyatt, uh, the design intent for regression testing is to acknowledge that, look, a lot of teams are kind of coming through our door and are in the same place in that like accessibility hasn't been the top priority for them for a really for the longest time. And they are coming in with pre-existing accessibility debt. And if you run an like Storybook's accessibility check or any kind of like accessibility check, even outside of Storybook, you're going to get a really, really, really long list of violations and errors that often aren't related to the specific work at a pull request or a feature branch level. And so, like when encountering that really long list, a lot of folks can't just stop everything and stop everything and just go and address every single accessibility issue in their application. And so where the regression testing comes in handy is like it's acknowledging that, look, you have a list of accessibility issues and debt that you have to address. Everyone knows that, but at the same time, you want to continue shipping. So regression tests allow you to identify which accessibility issues have been introduced by the code, like your specific code on your specific feature branch, so that you can address them. You don't have to you're not adding more debt. And you can keep the workflow moving.
Cool. I think a lot of the other questions will probably address through the demo, so maybe I'll hand it off to you, Kyle.
Yeah, I would say that's true, except for this one. Haritha has an excellent question that I really wanted to talk about, even if nobody asked about it. So the question is, can Chromatic catch most accessibility issues, or is manual testing still necessary? So the answer is yes and yes. So it can only catch the accessibility issues that can be caught by automated testing, which is about, what's the number, like 41% on average. But like, it's also, that's not like a simple number. Like that's almost every color contrast issue, a lot of ARIA issues. Like it's the bulk of accessibility issues that are encountered in real world usage. And so automated testing is an excellent foundation, like first step for your accessibility journey, if you will. But manual testing is absolutely still necessary. If you truly want to validate that something is accessible by people of all abilities, you have to manually verify that. You cannot rely on automated accessibility alone. So I hope that was clear.
Absolutely. Yeah. Kyle, do you wanna kick off the demo part?
I'd love to. Let me share my screen. And then I'm also going to try to change my camera so I'm not looking at the side. Okay. So yeah, we're going to walk through kind of the whole workflow. We'll start with Storybook, so kind of the more local side of it. And then Varun will show how that can be enhanced even further with Chromatic. But it's not like a linear Storybook thing, Chromatic. It's more of a cycle, because as you'll see, when you use Chromatic, to do any debugging or anything like that, you're using Storybook too. I think that's one of the biggest values of what we built here, is that it's the same experience, the same tools, whether it's local or CI. So for those of you not super familiar with Storybook, it allows you to take a component like a button here, render it in isolation, and then it'll like, whether you set it up or usually automatically, it'll detect like the props that the component accepts, and then you can play with them here. So there's a large button. In this case, that was a very small change. Here we go, rounded or not. And then you can create what are called stories to capture these individual states and combinations of them. So like default, disabled, clear, one with an icon. And then what Storybook does is that ultimately you'll have a catalog of all of these components. And so this is a sample project we love to use in these demos called Meal Drop. It's kind of a like Uber Eats application kind of thing. And so you can see there's like quite a few components, and then there's even pages. So like here's a restaurant detail page showing like a full page of the application. And so we've got quite a bit of Storybook in here. So if you're using Storybook 9, that introduced a new capability we call Storybook Test, and it uses our vtest add-on to do it. And that's what this test widget is down here. And so what it can do is it can automatically transform all of your stories for all of your components into real vtest tests. And it does all that behind the scenes. And then when you run the tests, which I'm going to go ahead and do right now, I'll just run them. What it's doing behind the scenes is it runs vtest. It pulls up a like headless Chrome browser using Playwright. It renders your stories. If you have any interactions involved, I'll cover that in a second. It'll run those, and then it just verifies that everything works and verifies all your assertions. And so in this case, we can see that everything passed. And then if you have the accessibility add-on installed, so that's, well, I don't know why that was just zoomed in. So the accessibility add-on has been a part of Storybook for a long time. But we've released a new version that integrates with Storybook Test. And so I'm just going to click accessibility on here and rerun those tests. You can see it ran 86 tests pretty fast. And now we have 9 warnings showing up. So I can filter the sidebar to only show those warnings, so it's not so noisy. And I can see that, oh, there's actually an error on this page here. So I could go click on the accessibility one. If I didn't already have it open, it would have jumped me to the accessibility panel. You can see there's a color contrast issue. So I can either expand it here and kind of use this to find it, or I can show the highlights in the canvas itself. And now it's highlighting where the issue is. And so if I click on one of these, I can see, okay, there's a color contrast issue. Kind of looks like a badge. And so I can see all the places that have accessibility issues. And in this case, they're actually all from this core badge component. And this highlights something that I really want to try to get you to understand, which is because Storybook is so component centric and it doesn't only operate at the page level, the accessibility checks, and especially the way you fix those accessibility checks, is also component centric. So instead of trying to fix it at this page level, which if I have more than one violation here might be like really complex and noisy, I can go directly to the badge component and fix it there. And when I do, that fix will propagate, just like the error propagates, the fix will propagate all through everywhere that it's used. So your components work that way. Your tools should work that way too. So let's see. Now I'm going to jump into Storybook to kind of show you the workflow here. So I've got my editor here. Probably zoom in a couple ticks here. If that isn't big enough, will you let me know? Okay, so I got my Storybook, or my editor for the Storybook project here. Preview.tsx is one of the configuration files for Storybook. It controls how the stories are rendered. And so we've got parameters, which is like the core configuration for Storybook here. And under the alley or accessibility namespace, we have a test property. And that can accept 3 different values. Right now, it's to do. And what to do does is it produces warnings when there's a violation. But when we run this in CI, which I'll show you how to do that in a second, those warnings are not going to actually like produce a blocking error to you shipping. So if you're using this in like a PR status check, a warning doesn't block anything. In fact, it's not even reported in the CI context. But what we can do is we can change this to, so you could just turn it off entirely, but we can also change it to error. So I'm going to do that. Now I'm going to rerun my tests. And so now instead of warnings, they're actual errors, which will block if I try to like merge a PR or something like that. So I did that in preview, which affects the entire project. So now any accessibility violation is now going to error. And the workflow that we like to do is you go ahead and set error to everything in your project. And then anywhere that does have an accessibility violation, you go into that component's stories file. So I've got badge.stories here. And under parameters, I can have that same parameter. So Ali test. And here I can set it to do. I'm going to do that. Rerun these tests once more. Now you can see the badge is a warning. Everything else is an error. And that allows you to kind of do like a fake regression. So Varun will demo a much better way of doing this workflow using Chromatic. But if you're using Storybook locally, you can kind of manually do this regression workflow by erroring by default, but anything that does have an accessibility violation that you know you want to work on, you just can't do it now. You do that to do option, which we purposely called it to do so that it serves as a to-do list of your accessibility work to be done. We didn't call it warning because we wanted you to treat it as a to-do list. So now that I've done that, I'm going to actually go fix it. And I'm going to turn on watch mode so you can see how that works too. So if I turn on watch mode, that'll automatically watch my source files and my stories. So if I make a change, it'll automatically rerun. Okay, so we knew it was a color contrast issue. So we've got the background color and the color. And oh, I see. This was the typo. I should have said badge here instead of there. So I've got the badge background theme color now and the badge text theme color. So let me save that. And then it'll rerun. In this case, you'll see it's only rerunning 17 tests, not all 86. And then now we have no violations at all. And so it canceled my filter so I could just see everything. And that's what it should look like. So, and now that that's verified, this is really important. I need to go back to my badge stories. I don't have any accessibility violations anymore. So I'm going to remove this. Sorry, you can't quite see it. I'm going to remove that to do test parameter there so that it goes back to the error test parameter that's set for the whole project. And now, as I'm making my changes going forward, it will properly error and block me from shipping an accessibility violation. So that's kind of the local workflow of how to use the accessibility add-on and Storybook test inside of Storybook. And then I said I'd show you how that works in CI. So I've got my terminal here. I actually quit the Storybook application entirely. And then I'm going to do, let's see, I actually forgot in this project what it's called. Let me look it up. It is test Storybook. Okay, so I'm going to do yarn test Storybook. See here. Oh, that's the old. Sorry. Let me do. Oops. Okay. Yarn test is what I'm meant to do. All right, so you can see here that just runs vtest. And so it's going to run all of our components that are in stories in Storybook. It's also going to, in this case, it'll also run any unit tests that I have using vtest as well. It'll run both of those in the same and in parallel. And so it total tests. But you see that didn't require Storybook at all because it transforms the stories into real vtest tests. So at that point, once they're tests, it doesn't have anything to do with Storybook anymore. And I want to go recreate. So I'm going to recreate those accessibility violations just to show you that the accessibility because I have the error, the accessibility errors are also showing up in the CLI. And you can run that CLI in your CI, of course. You just run the vtest command. Okay, so at that point, I would like to hand it off to Varun to show how this can, again, be enhanced with Chromatic.
Thanks, Kyle. Let me share my screen. I think you have to stop sharing, Kyle.
Oh, sorry about that. There you go.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So I have the same storybook running here, and introduce the same bug that Kyle was showing. So I'm using background color as banner background and color as banner text. So locally, you can see Storybook is running. I'm seeing the same accessibility issue here. Now, what I'll do is I'm going to switch to my terminal and let's go ahead and add a new commit. And then to run Chromatic, I have it set up as a task, so I can just run npm run Chromatic, and that will start a new build. Now, for the purposes of this demo, we're going to run a few builds. I don't want to wait around here for each build. So instead, I've pre-executed them, and I just want to show you sort of what what the builds look like, so we don't have to worry about running each build. So the first thing you need to do is in your Chromatic project, you can go to the manage page and under tests, you'll now see a new option for accessibility tests, and you can go ahead and enable that. For new projects, this will be enabled by default. For existing projects, you can go in and enable it. And then once you enable it, the first time you run a build, you'll see a build that looks something like this, where Chromatic will tell you that you've enabled accessibility testing, and new baselines were created, and everything was auto accepted in as baselines. So what that means is, if your stories have any kind of accessibility violations associated with them, those will be added to its baseline. So in this case, I have an example here. Let's see, it's the homepage component has a accessibility violation for button name must have discernible text. In this case, it doesn't, and this violation is now part of the baseline for this particular story. And what that means is, if I rerun these tests on another PR, I won't be alerted to this particular violation because that's been added to the baseline. Cool. So so this was the initial run just to get accessibility testing working. And then the one where I changed the badge color to banner background and banner text, we ran that as a build. So that's the next build here. And it looks something like this. So similar to what you were seeing locally, we have the badge component with some changes, the restaurant card, and all the way up to different pages like the restaurant detail page. So let's go into that badge component and see what we get. Similar to what you were seeing locally in Storybook, the DOM node with accessibility issue has been highlighted in red. You can toggle this on and off using the toolbar here, similar to how you can toggle diffs on and off. You're able to control that from the toolbar. And down at the bottom, you'll see this new tab, which is the accessibility tab, which gives you all the violations that were found in this particular build. So here, again, similar to what you were seeing in Storybook, you have information on what kind of issue this was, links to the documentation, so you can see how to resolve this issue. You can even pop open the deployed Storybook to view the story live. And then also you get a more focused snapshot. So if this was, let's say, a larger story where the button was just one part of that story, this sort of kind of highlights exactly where that issue is. And then if you click on the specific DOM node itself, you also get a more summarized version of that information. So if I go through, you can see in this particular story, there is a visual change, but no accessibility issue. And the reason for that is uh, the batch color that we changed in dark mode, it still has high enough color contrast, so it's only a visual change and not an accessibility change. So this is where you can see how the same code change can impact in different ways. But you can see in light mode, we definitely see that as an issue. And if we go all the way up to pages, again, that issue is cascading, and you can see both it's introducing a visual change because you're changing the color, so Chromatic is catching that visual change, but then also on top of that, you're getting the accessibility change. And here we're at that page level again. You can see the more focused snapshot kind of highlights exactly where within that page, that larger story, is the DOM node that's causing the issue. So I wanted to demonstrate like the benefits of regression here. So what I've done is in this particular build, I've gone through and accepted all of those changes. And what that means is this color contrast issue that we're introducing, we're adding that to the baseline of the batch component and all of these other stories. And then what will happen now next is if I make more changes in my code and run tests again, I won't be alerted to these issues again. So let's go ahead and do that. So what I'm going to do is switch back to the storybook, and let's go to the restaurant details page. And sorry, in particular, I want to go to the loading screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this loader with something with a different type of loader. So in this particular folder, let's add a new file, call it loading spinner.tsx. And I'm going to drop the contents here. And then in my restaurant details page component, I am going to replace the spinner here with this new loading spinner. And that should update the imports. I can get rid of the spinner import. And then this is what the new loading page looks like. So again, I can go into my terminal, add a new commit, and then run Chromatic once more. Again, so like I said, for the demo purposes, I've executed these builds already. So let's go and take a look at what that build looks like in Chromatic.
And
So
just to real quick, there's a question about where you're running Chromatic right now and how you'd run this in production with a CI tool. So what's happening is Varun is kicking off Chromatic via the CLI, but that you could do exactly the same thing via like a GitHub action or like a CI, like in your CI pipeline. Since we've truncated that kind of CI pipeline part for the sake of the demo, we have a lot to get through today, but effectively this simulates what it'd be like to run in CI. There's
yeah,
another
absolutely.
question from Cipriana that I just want to kind of pause while we're here to address, which is around like the speed of this versus say Playwright or Cypress. So what's happening behind the scenes in our capture cloud is we're basically just like what we do in visual testing, breaking down every single story and then running those in parallel so that from a speed perspective, typically in an end-to-end test, you have to wait one after the other. We are doing it all in parallel, so we offer probably like an order of magnitude faster speeds for these accessibility checks.
Yeah, so some of the other tools
can I expand on
offer.
that?
Yeah, go for it, Kyle.
So Don's answer was for Chromatic. For Storybook, when you're running it locally or in the CLI there, the reason why we built all this on top of VTest is for the speed. We did extensive benchmarking using a variety of tools, and we found that VTest was definitely the fastest. And even though it's spinning up a real browser, like under the covers there, it is blazing fast. It is only just like a little bit slower than like your unit test, for example. So yeah, they're plenty fast, much faster than traditional playwright Cypress end-to-end tests.
I think that being said, like there are also limitations about how fast you can run tests on your local machine, even if you have like the fastest kind of Lamborghini of test runners. You only have so many threads that are available at any given time. If you're running Zoom, that's going to take CPU and resources away from your VTest test run. And so, I don't, I want to be careful not to overstate, like, hey, you can run all of these things on your local machine and like instantly. They are 10x faster with VTest for sure than others, but you for a project that has many hundreds, many thousands of stories, you do hit the speed limits at some point, and the speed limits aren't really enforced by us per se. It's really like how many atoms can go through a transistor on your computer.
Right. Back to the build. So this is the chromatic build where we've changed the loading screen animation. And if I look at the uh, that particular story, again, you'll notice the stuff that's highlighted in green is the visual change. And when I turn on accessibility, this particular image is highlighted as missing in alt text. So that's a new issue. But if you look at the build, that is the only issue that's being reported. The color contrast issue in the button, that's not being flagged again, because in this particular commit, this is the only change to the accessibility violations in your code base. The others were pre-existing and were added to the baseline. So we're not reporting those again and making this a noisy experience for developers. So as a developer, when I come in and look at this, I know exactly that this is an issue caused by my code on this particular commit, and I know how to address it. So that's the last step. So what I'm going to do is, instead of accepting this build, let's go ahead and fix the issues that we've introduced. So in this particular case, this image is missing an alt text. So I'll add an empty alt attribute because this is meant to be a decoration image. And in the badge component, let's change this to badge background and badge text. So locally, if I look at those stories, this now has an empty alt attribute to make it decoration image, and the badge is back to its original color palette. So again, if I save this commit and run Chromatic again, we will end up on this final build. And now what you'll notice is you're not seeing accessibility violations anymore. And the reason for that is when you fix an accessibility issue, Chromatic auto accepts that. So you don't have to worry about going in to accept fixes. But there is a visual change associated with that, and that's the thing that's flagged here. So you can go and accept that. And what you'll notice is same thing here for the restaurant details page. There is no accessibility issue because we fixed it, but there is a visual diff that you can go ahead and accept. I want to show one other type of accessibility issue. So in this particular case, what you'll notice is it's not a new story. It's an existing story, but there is no before and after snapshot that you're seeing here. And the reason for that is this particular story has no visual changes, but only an accessibility violation associated with that. And the reason for that was, let's say for some reason, we ended up dropping the alt tag for this particular image that was already in code. So the image is the same as before, we're just missing an alt tag. So in that case, Chromatic is not showing you a visual diff. It's only showing you the accessibility issue that was flagged, and the DOM node is highlighted. So this is a special case. But yeah, that's crux of the regression workflow. And the last thing I want to demo is the dashboard. So in this case, this is from our Chromatic monorepo, is our dashboard. What you can see here is it's tracking the number of violations over time. But there's a bunch of issues found. Someone fixed those and the count went down. Up top, this is the selector for switching between different branches and different time spans. So this is, like I said, by default, all plans have access to the main branch. And when I say the main branch, we're using some heuristics to default to main if you're using master or a couple of other options. We default to that. And you get access to 1 week's worth of data. But if you're on enterprise plan and upgrade to add the accessibility package, then you'll have all branches and full history. And underneath is the table that I mentioned, which gives you a list of all the components, all the stories associated with them, sorted by highest components with the highest number of issues first. And you can go through and view everything in your storybook that has issues. Currently, it is a static table, but we are going to be allowing you to sort by different table headings and search through this shortly. And the other thing you get here is the option to download a CSV, a raw CSV of the entire set of stories associated with your storybook and any violations found across them. So this is the raw data if you want to use that to run your own analysis or use it for reporting purposes. Quite often, if you're filling out like a VPAT, you need to have supporting data. So this is the kind of thing you would use.
But real quick, Hayden asked a really great question. Does it count? Does this dashboard count all violations, even those that were accepted as baselines when the accessibility features enabled in Chromatic?
Yeah, absolutely. So it does count all violations, even including the ones in baseline. So this is telling you what is the total scale of problem in your code base currently. If you accept something to the baseline, it doesn't mean that problem has gone away. You still need to address it at some point. So yeah, that is definitely included.
And just to add, like there are two main jobs to be done with the workflows that we have just released around accessibility. The first, regression testing, it's being able to quickly and immediately get feedback on your pull request about any kind of new violations. These aren't like pre-existing violations. These are like the new ones that are on a given branch. The second job to be done is understanding the total scope of your accessibility and compliance posture, and at least from an automated standpoint, and being able to dig into which pages, which components, which things are causing the most issues, so that you can remediate them at your own pace. And that's what this dashboard is all about. And so they're kind of like two separate but related workflows. They use the same data, but you would access them and you would use them a little bit differently.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's pretty much everything we wanted to cover today. I know there was one question that went by, I want to quickly address for everyone. So the stuff that Kyle showed today was using the new test add-on for Storybook 9. However, Chromatic will work with the accessibility add-on as far back as Storybook 7, so you don't need to be on Storybook 9 and using the latest features. If you're on an older version of Storybook, you can still use Chromatic for accessibility testing as long as you're using the add-on.
Yeah, that's a really important distinction. Thanks.
And Neil Wharton asked, can you run these accessibility tests for a combination of viewports and themes like you can with story modes for testing?
Absolutely. So the builds I was showing here, sorry, let's look at this build. So you can see this is running across different modes. So dark theme, light theme, and similarly, if you're using different viewports, it will run against different viewports. So all the features that you get with Chromatic currently, viewport modes, that is all included for accessibility testing too. The only key thing to remember is accessibility only runs on Chrome. We don't run it across multiple browsers. So that is one key difference. But yeah, the rest is kind of the same. And I know there were a few questions around like how snapshots are calculated. So or how this impacts snapshot count. So I wanted to share a link to our doc. So in our talk, docs on the billing page, we do have a snapshot calculator that lets you see how this would impact your project if you're using accessibility tests and or just visual tests and running builds across different browsers and viewports and so on. This is helpful if you want to use it. The other thing I should call out is TurboSnap. So folks who are not familiar, TurboSnap is a more advanced chromatic feature that analyzes your actual build generated by Storybook to see which components and stories have code changes associated with them, and then only runs new tests for those changes, those particular story files, and for the rest, it copies over existing baselines. So if you are using TurboSnap, we only charge one TurboSnap for stories without changes, regardless of the fact that you might be running visual and accessibility testing on it. So that is a great way to optimize both speed and efficiency of Chromatic, but also control sort of how many snapshots are executed for your code base. So if you have a bunch of stories where there are no changes associated with them, you're not going to be charged a snapshot for accessibility separately in that particular case if you're using TurboSnap.
Jarek asks, being a reviewer, am I able to mark accessibility issue as to do? Being a dev, I can do that, which was demoed earlier, but I wonder if a reviewer, aka non-dev, can do the same with Chromatic.
So the workflow that Kyle showed earlier was more Storybook specific. In Chromatic, the whole idea of adding stuff to a baseline is effectively marking stuff as to do that you want to address it later at a later time. As long as you have access within Chromatic that allows you to review stories, yes, you can go in and add stuff to the baseline.
Near asks, can you use another accessibility engine other than Axe? Does it require it to be open source?
For the time being, we only support Axe because that's being used within the Storybook accessibility add-on, but it is something on our radar. I know IBM has a custom accessibility engine that works slightly differently. So yeah, something we're exploring, but for the time being, just Axe.
Yeah, just to add a little bit to that, like we rely on a data format in Chromatic, and so if that data format adheres and you can output that data format, it's very likely that we'll be able to support that into the future. We just need to test it. Obviously, we launched it 2 days ago, and so we'll be kind of like exploring that in the future. Will Harris asked, I may have missed this, but how's this being rolled out? What version of Storybook / Chromatic is this being released?
So if you use Chromatic currently, there is no specific version. It's available to everyone. And as far as Storybook support is concerned, you have to be on Storybook 7 and up. Sorry, 6.5 and up. Sorry. Yeah. So I would encourage you to check out our documentation to take a look. And then similarly, I think there's one more question here around. It looks like an accessibility issue in badge will be counted everywhere it's used, like page. Is it right? Are you looking into that being counted as one violation in total? So yeah, that is correct. The idea there is because components are cascading up, that issue exists everywhere. So it is in fact multiple violations. But the whole point of using the component-based approach is you know what the source of the problem is more quickly. And when you fix that issue, then all of the other ones are automatically resolved for you. You don't have to go and manually sort of say, yeah, this is now addressed.
Dom, do you maybe want to talk about some of the product thinking around improving that experience that we've been exploring?
Can you repeat the which experience?
So he's saying like there was an accessibility in badge,
Yeah.
but it propagated. It was in pages, it was in organism components. So I know we've been exploring ways to improve the product for that particular thing, not just in accessibility, but visual tests as well.
Yeah, I think that all kind of like boils down to dependency analysis and understanding the dependency tree. And so a couple, there's a technological thing that we need to solve there with like getting the map of the dependency tree and how that relates to stories. And then there's like the kind of visualization developer experience of like being able to surface that information to you. I think where we'd start is like solving the technical challenge, and then move towards like surfacing in more information to you to help you gauge impact of things that have like that are atomic, that actually have a rippling effect throughout the ecosystem or throughout your snapshots. And then like once we get that, we can kind of explore surfacing the highest impact things to you proactively. That's kind of how we're thinking about the problem. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into that when working across different frameworks and tooling, but in general, that's the shape of where we're going.
I think we covered all of our questions here, and we're coming up to
There's
time.
actually,
Oh, sorry,
just real
go ahead.
quick, there were two that I meant to cover in my demo, and I'm realizing I did not do that. So one of them was around, can you configure it to run these checks against WCAG 2.2? Yes, you can. So by default, it checks WCAG 2.0, A, and double A, and then some best practices, I think. But there's a few different other rule sets, including WCAG 2.2 or like WCAG 2.2 AAA, for example. You can configure all of that. It's at the Storybook level, and then Chromatic will just use that setting. I don't know if I still have it. Yeah, there we go. So I just shared the link in the chat to the configuration option for that. So that was one question. The other one was around, can you configure it to only check a like subset of components? And again, that's also Storybook configuration because it's at the story level. And so that parameters.ali.test, where I showed that it could be off, to do, or error. Correct me if I'm wrong, but does Chromatic respect that? Where did we land on that?
No, so in Chromatic currently, if you want to disable a story, it disables Chromatic entirely, so both visual tests and accessibility and interaction tests.
Okay.
We are going to offer the option to disable each one independently, but for the time being, it's sort of all or nothing with Chromatic.
Okay.
I think there's a slight nuance here though. Like if you mark it as off, I'm I'm like 95% sure that Chromatic will not like account for that. So yeah, that parameter that you were talking about, Kyle,
Yeah.
you mark off, Chromatic won't see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, then that would be how you do it. You would either like opt in or opt out of things with that parameter value.
Yeah, kind of two levels of like disabling. There's a
Yeah.
level in Storybook, and then there's a level of like in Chromatic.
Okay.
Ian asks, if using different rule sets, can you define the error type for different rule sets? For example, give a to-do for WCAG 2.2 AAA violations, but errors on WCAG 2.0 AA.
No, you cannot do that. However, all of those rules have their own criticality or
Criticality.
severity level. And I think you'll find that like a lot of the AAA ones are minor, whereas a lot of the AA ones are like critical or severe. So yeah.
Ian, and also if there are very like specific kind of DOM elements or specific rules that you want to ignore for a certain type of for a story or for component, you can do that. So that's another way of I think kind of getting to your intent here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's in the story configuration for that story. It's like a parameter.
Yeah, I should mention that all of the configuration, even for Chromatic, lives in code and is configured via the Storybook add-on. So if you enable, disable specific rules, yeah, that is in Storybook itself. Uh, cool. I think that's everything. Thank you all for joining. We'll share a recording out once it's available to us. But yeah, thanks for taking time. See
Yeah,
y'all.
thanks for joining us, everybody. This was great.
Thanks.